Yes, my Bandofla family, welcome to another episode. In fact, this is episode number 54. I guess the place to start in 54 is just looking over some highlights because we've come to the end of 2022. It's been a difficult year for a lot of people. And we can't we have to acknowledge that. But in terms of the podcast, I got a message from the Anchor platform, and we've added over 500 with this podcast. It will be over 500 minutes of new content for our listeners in 2022, which is something we're really pleased about, and hopefully that will continue in 2023 as well. We've certainly got some great guests lined up, and you'll be hearing from these in due course. So I think the countries that we seem to be making waves in is obviously our main listening base is here in the UK, obviously over in the United States of America, given some of the themes that we've been following in recent times. Ireland as well is showing up strongly on the heat map, as is Brazil and Portugal, which is interesting to note. But a massive thank you to every single person who listens to Bandofla. Do give us a follow or a like on Twitter. You can follow us at _Bandofla, that's BANDOFLA. And we're also on YouTube. If you search Bandofla, you'll see a number of recorded episodes that are available to view and listen to. So, this is episode 54. And I guess what we're going to start with is a new campaign. We are launching a special campaign. I went and saw a good friend of mine, a guy called Erkin Ramadan, also known as Egg. Egg is the chair of the Shacklewell Lane Mosque, also known as Ramadan Masjid. Masjid. Can't say that, get my teeth in. It's in Dalston in London, in kind of northeast London, and that building has been there certainly for well over 100 years. It was previously a synagogue, and there's still some amazing Jewish historical significance within the mosque, which Egg is keen to make sure that is preserved and respected. And I'll show some pictures. Actually, there's some amazing Star of David and some Hebrew writing, which I will share on our Twitter page for people to see. Now, the campaign that we're running is effectively going to be a DIY SOS campaign. It's inspired by DIY SOS, I should say. Egg is keen to get some work done. They don't rely on any sort of real funding apart from what's provided by people coming and praying at the mosque. Hopefully we're going to be able to help him with looking at some possible lottery funding. But until we get to that point, we're looking to do a quick win. And the campaign we're looking to organise is a shout out to tradesmen and women who are willing to give up their time for a day or two, because we need to organise some disability friendly toilets at the mosque, because Egg's been inundated with problem after problem with the building, because it is an old building, and obviously it would have to be, he has to keep up with the repair and upkeep of the building. So we are looking for anyone with any plumbing expertise to please get in touch with this podcast. This whole initiative is designed around DIY SOS, And big respect to that show for the brilliant work that they do, helping families who are really struggling with their own issues in their homes. So this initiative is about getting some disability friendly toilets in place in the mosque in Shacklewell Lane. So please do get in touch with the Bandofla podcast. You can email us at podcastbandofla@gmail.com, or you can leave us a message on the Anchor platform. You'll have 60 seconds to leave us your details, and we will definitely get back to you. So DIY SOS style, coming to Shacklewell Lane Mosque in Dalston. Egg, hopefully we will get something up and running, inshallah. So please, anyone with any plumbing expertise who can come along and help out, please do get in touch with the show. And we're hoping to get Egg Gunay on the show soon as well, so he can talk a little bit more about his work. What an interesting character he is. So we're kicking off this episode with a new campaign. So we will keep you updated on that. So we're going to briefly touch on politics, because we always like to do that. I think the last time we spoke about politics, certainly in our last episode, Liz Truss was still Prime Minister. She didn't last long. I think 42 days was her reign, shortest reign in the history of being a Prime Minister here in Britain. But Rishi Sunak, he's the Prime Minister who can't win an election, certainly amongst his grassroots member, his rank and file Conservative members. Look, the bottom line is, Rishi, when you stood for election against Liz Truss, you actually did quite well. You got 60,000 votes from the Conservative members, which I was surprised that you got that much, given that they voted for a person of colour. I think you know, and most of the Conservative MPs know, that had you not been elected through the process that you were elected, you wouldn't be the Prime Minister of this country. And you really do like a photo opportunity, don't you? I'm sure there's lots of nicknames out there for the Prime Minister. But one particular photo opportunity springs to mind of recent times, and that is where, even talk about it fucking winds me up, because, he went to a food bank, a man whose government is responsible for the astronomical growth in food banks. So the Prime Minister goes to a food bank and he's serving this person across the counter. And then the Prime Minister asks this homeless person what business he is involved in. I kid you not. It's beyond cringeworthy. And you wonder what on earth is his advisors up to that he's not being briefed. He looks beyond out of touch. The Conservatives are beyond being out of touch. It's just shockingly horrible to see. He doesn't miss a photo opportunity, and I have to say the same applies to the leader of the Labour Party, who is being seen more and more standing next to Union Jacks, which, we know why he's doing that, and it's very sad what the Labour Party has turned into. And yes, there's still some amazing MPs in the Labour Party, and a particular MP who is still had the whip withdrawn, who we all know about. But in terms of the leadership of the party and the direction it's been going in the last couple of years, it's certainly not a party that I recognise or that I want to really be a part of, and that's why I cancelled my Labour Party membership a few months ago. So anyway, on the, there's been a lot of issues, a lot of news headlines around the asylum seekers. There's some incredibly hostile language and rhetoric towards the Albanian community. I find it really deeply uncomfortable. The Albanian community recently celebrated their Independence Day, and a few Albanian people came to central London. I think they came across Westminster Bridge, and it's big news on LBC and other news channels, and the usual suspects, the right-wing commentators. It's that they need to listen to what they're saying, because it's just inciting hatred. There's no other words for it. The whole business around how asylum seekers are being treated, the whole business around Manston and the detention centre there, the fact that the Home Secretary, the language that she regularly uses, references to our country being invaded, really isn't helpful. And it did, the incident at Manston, in my opinion, was not really a great surprise. What was a surprise was the local police force, who took, quite a few days before they, labeled it as a terrorist incident. When the news came out, my instant reaction was that it was likely to be terrorist related, and Hope Not Hate, the fantastic anti-racist organization, they called it out almost immediately. They had intelligence on the person, who unfortunately went on to take their own life. It would have been good, in my opinion, if the individual was brought to justice. And we need to speak to those people and find out why. Well, we know what's motivating them, but we need to have conversations with these people and to try and educate them, and try and make them understand that there is always a better way. So the Manston incident took place, and then the recent High Court, the High Courts, Royal Courts of Justice ruled on the latest hearing on Rwanda to say that it's a lawful policy, although the media have made much mileage out of that, because which is not surprising. But when you actually read the judge's verdict, it's not. I don't believe it's as bad as what certainly what some of the newspapers are making out, in terms of suggesting that planes full of asylum seekers will be flown out to Rwanda. That's simply not the case. Indeed, the 7 or 8 individuals who were earmarked to be flown to Rwanda, the judge has ruled that their cases are assessed as a matter of urgency, reassessed, I should say. So even those individuals, hopefully they will win their cases, and will avoid being deported or sent to Rwanda. That whole process, we've covered it extensively on Bun Dofla. It's a bloody disgusting immigration policy, and it just panders to those on the extreme right wing of society. So we haven't really seen much of Liz Truss. She's kind of disappeared. Boris was on a few holidays as well. Some of these MPs take the fucking piss. Sorry for my bad language. But they really do take the piss. They get their wages as an MP. There's big breaks. There's Parliament breaks for recess regularly. But an MP going on holiday when Parliament isn't in recess is taking the piss, especially when you're going abroad and doing speeches and getting paid about £250,000 bloody pounds for each speech. No guesses, no prizes for guessing who that is. But that's the state of our government, unfortunately. And, we have to be ready as a collective to get this government out. I've been complaining about Labour. Probably, is Labour the party of alternative? I've seen policies that the Green Party are plugging, and I'll be honest with you, I'm much more inclined to support policies of the Green Party. Admittedly, I don't know all their policies, but certainly when it comes to the environment, they will have the most far-reaching and effective policies, one would expect. But they are very, very worker right orientated as well. And I know internationally, speaking to our friend Delilah in Texas, I have to say Delilah was a true socialist. And what was very interesting in the governor elections in America was the way the system was effectively rigged. That there's very little airtime for any other candidate outside the red and blue of the Republicans and the Democrats, and that's always going to be a problem in democracy. When you look to have positive, progressive political change, it's going to be hard to achieve it in places like America and even here in the UK. But I think that's why we need to see PR proportional representation. We've touched on that, and I think that's definitely the way forward. So what else is Bandofla going to touch on? I have to offer an apology and eat a little bit of humble pie, probably quite a lot of humble pie actually, because I've been talking about boycotting the World Cup in Qatar, which came to an end in a brilliant, unbelievable World Cup final between Argentina and France. And I was genuinely going to boycott the World Cup because of everything going on in Qatar in the build-up in terms of the infrastructure and the issues surrounding the migrant workers, the issues surrounding LGBT plus rights. And one of my Muslim friends quite rightly pointed out to me and said, Fevzi, yes, I understand the points you're making, but was you shouting from the cliff tops when the World Cup went to Russia 4 years ago, or when it was in the USA previously? These are countries with their own awful issues in terms of human rights. And I have to say it was a fair point. So I still did commentary to support migrant rights issues, migrant worker rights issues in Qatar, because I think there's definitely ongoing issues. And FIFA need to do a lot more. I don't know how much money they've made from the World Cup, but it's a shitload of money. And they need to do more to help all those families of those migrant workers who have lost their lives or who have been badly injured. But looking back at the World Cup, I have to say it was a phenomenal success. We didn't see the violence that is normally associated with World Cups. Obviously, they pulled alcohol sales a few hours before the Budweiser issue, and obviously they were one of the biggest sponsors. But I thought it was actually a refreshing change to see England fans sitting in a cafe drinking a cup of coffee and being very chilled out, as opposed to what scenes we normally see in the World Cup, where every single World Cup, maybe not so much in America, but there's always been significant fan violence, hooligans who have been grabbing the headlines. So I think there were some definite plus points for the Qatar World Cup. And, you know, you have to look at some of the outstanding games, the highlights. And I think Lionel Messi has finally put the question to bed in terms of who is the current greatest footballer that is playing. You know, there's always been a debate about Messi and Ronaldo, and as much as I love Ronaldo, and he's a brilliant player, but Lionel Messi has now the World Cup to his name, and so he has to be regarded, in my opinion, as the greatest footballer, current footballer of all time. So yeah, it was great, and you know, some of the atmosphere, you know, the games, the final was just so exciting, and Mbappe underlined his own reputation with an incredible performance, scoring a hat-trick in the final, but unfortunately also finishing on the losing side. Personally, I wanted France to win, but you know, fair play to Messi and his Argentina team. So I guess domestically, it's worth me touching on the fact that I know there's been a break, obviously, because of the World Cup, but the domestic season has just started, and Arsenal maintained their form. They're still top of the Premier League, and but they've got some tough games coming up, so we'll see. And we're hoping to do an episode dedicated to all things Arsenal, because there's a few fans that have been in touch, and you know, we want to have a good in-depth discussion to see, you know, I don't think most Arsenal fans still don't genuinely believe that we're going to be at the helm come the middle of May, but you know, people are still very positive about how we've been playing. So you know, that's something to look out for. I think it would be remiss of Bundofla to not mention the really sad news. Literally, it's just come through as we're recording this episode, that Pele has very sadly lost his life today at 82 years old. Cancer has finally, you know, put an end to the man's life. And we talked about Messi, and Pele is undoubtedly one of the greatest footballing talents to have ever graced a football pitch. And our thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends. Rest in peace, Pele. Here in the UK, the cost of living crisis continues to bite. We already touched on the obscene photo opportunity that Rishi Sunak did at the food banks, but the cost of living crisis and the cost of energy bills. You know, I know, speaking to some pensioners, they have a joint income of about £1,000 a month. You know, and they showed me their bill for the last month, and their bill was well over £300. You know, and so you're talking that their energy bills are almost 40% of their income every month. I'm not sure. Yes, there is some you know, support being provided by the government, but it doesn't go anywhere near far enough to support these people who are having to choose between eating and heating their homes. You know, and I think, you know, we'll have to watch how this develops, but I'm really, really scared, you know, when we see how bloody cold it's been recently. And you look at how the environment is changing and reacting to the global warming crisis. Been some idiots who are pointing to how cold it is and saying, yeah, that's really, that's global warming, isn't it? But people who don't actually understand how global warming works and the impact that it has. You look at the incredibly freezing weather that has, gone over vast parts of the United States of America, and so many people have died there. The poor people will always suffer, and that's why we've been talking about enough is enough, and the fact that we need to put forward a redistribution of wealth plan, because there's people in the world that have got far too much money. They don't pay the tax that they should on their enormous wealth. And the numbers that we're talking about in terms of their wealth, if we try to count the amount of money that they have, I'm talking about the Musks of this world, the Bill Gates of this world, and many others. You just would never ever even begin to get anywhere near to the number that to get to the end of how much money they have if you were counting non-stop without sleeping for many hundreds of years. This is the reality of the obscene wealth that certain individuals have, and the need to redistribute wealth, which brings me nicely on to the point around the trade unions here in the UK, and the trade union leaders such as Dave Ward and Mick Lynch and many others who are now consistently talking about the need to redistribute wealth. You look at the companies making obscene profits, and the workers, it's the workers who create these profits. And then if you look at what the chief executives earn and the board members, and compare that to some of the wage demands of your worker, and then we get told, oh, if we give workers an inflation rated pay rise, it's going to just push inflation even higher. But that argument is never presented when you see directors and CEOs getting 30-40% pay rises. So there's a gross unfairness about how this whole narrative is being run, and it has to be challenged. And the trade union movement are at the forefront of doing this. And we've touched on the Enough is Enough campaign. Please go to the website Enough is Enough to see what their latest campaigns are, and get behind and support that brilliant campaign. Before I sign off, I think we need to give respect to all of the unions who are involved in industrial action, because there's workers who are giving up their pay, which is the ultimate for a worker to do that. And when you look at the companies like Royal Mail and BT up to a point, although BT resolved their dispute with the CWU, Royal Mail, RMT, you wonder at the RCN with the nurses, the role the government is playing has been absolutely woeful. They can, get involved and stop a lot of these disputes, or certainly bring progress to talks around the negotiating table, and they're just not interested. However, the public support for trade unions, and it is on the back of the cost of living crisis, because people aren't stupid. They know that these workers would not go on strike and give up a day's pay. For some workers, they've been on strike now for 19 or 20 different days, and there's some unions that have disputes that are actually there's an indefinite strike. I think the GMB and their workers at the Jacobs Crackers factory in Aintree are on indefinite strike. So I don't know if there's anyone on the GMB who can maybe, if there's any hardship fund appeals that we can highlight. I know the CW and the RMT have both got hardship appeals, and it's definitely, worth supporting. Please support those workers who are standing up to protect their terms and conditions and to get a decent pay rise. So just certainly these are the ones that I can reel off from the top of my head. CWU, I mean, they had an incredible postal rally in central London in Parliament Square a couple of weeks ago. Nearly 20,000 postal workers, not reps, grassroots members, came down to Westminster to let the politicians know exactly how they feel in terms of the current dispute and their support, the overwhelming massive support that they've got for their union, the CWU. Like I said, the GMB are also on strike in various places. The RCN nurses and doctors have just gone on strike, or I should say nurses. I think that the narrative again around the nurses, we were clapping all of the key workers at 8 p.m. every Thursday night. The hypocrisy around the MPs, our Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, who was also the Chancellor at the time, standing outside number 11 clapping. And then you got Steve Barclay, the Muppet, who, goes to talks and then he won't talk about pay. Why are these incompetent idiots allowed to get away with this nonsense? It's just, the list is just never ending. So the RMT and ASLEF are also involved in industrial action, as is teachers in the NEU and the UCU as well, the lecturers union, and the PCS, the Union for Civil Servants. They've just announced a successful outcome in the ballots, and their members have also commenced industrial action. So there's the workers are standing up. They've had enough. Unions are standing up. They've had enough. We need to challenge the status quo. It's simply unacceptable in this cost of living crisis. If they think they're going to give workers the crumbs whilst the fat cats get all the cream, they've got another thing coming. So, okay, listen, I've come to the end of this episode. Look, for those of you who do celebrate Christmas, I hope you've had a lovely time with your family and friends. And, with the new year literally around the corner, I genuinely hope 2023 brings you, your family, your friends, your loved ones, peace, happiness, and good health. From Bandofla, I'm your host, Febzi Hussein. Remember to follow us on YouTube, on Twitter, and do get in touch. And we always welcome people's feedback. So peace and love. We're out of here. Take care.